Welcome to the last section of our course. In this section, we'll be building a reactive Spring application with Spring data. We will first set up our Spring data with R2DBC PostgreSQL. Then we will create the application using Spring data. Third video will be about initializing the database, so we'll need to propagate database with some data. We will pre-populate it. Fourth video will be about implementing router functions to create REST endpoint. Basically, we create two REST endpoints, one for GET and second one for POST. Finally, we'll be using data streaming service, so we'll write a test that verifies that our service works as expected. And this is the first video in which we set up the Spring data with R2DBC PostgreSQL. We will be adding R2DBC dependency. We will be adding R2DBC Postgres dependency, and we will be configuring Postgres Spring Bean. So let's go to code. So we first need to go to our pom.xml and add Spring data R2DBC and R2DBC PostgreSQL. Besides that, you need to add two repositories. First one is JBoss Maven 2 Release repository and also Spring plugins. So you need to have both in your class path to be able to load those dependencies. So we'll go to the R2DBC Spring data. This is a configuration that provides a bean. So this is a bean for low-level way of interaction with database. So you have a database client that is not wrapped within any repository or something similar. So ideally you want to operate with your database using CRUD repository that provides a lot of Spring useful features, but also you have a way to use database client that is a raw client. So to initialize it, you need to create Postgres connection factory and pass Postgres connection configuration. You need to pass a host, database, username and password and build it. You will have connection factory here, and then you can leverage that factory to create the client. Database client is taking the factory, and database client is a class from R2DBC, so this is an abstract interface that could be implemented by any third-party engine. Then, if you have a client, you can execute your actions that will work in a reactive way. So for example, here we are executing update, set item name to PS4, and then you are fetching and checking if the rows were updated. We'll get a mono of integer that carries the number of elements that were updated. And then we are returning client because we need to provide the database client as a bean to the Spring container. Once you will have that, you can inject your database client and interact with the underlying database using the client and using the SQL syntax.